This is episode 7 of Art, Why I Stuck with a Junkie Jazz Man. In episode 6, Art and Laurie got down. Episode 7 starts at a chapter called Broken Blossoms. Art had worked in the paymaster's office in San Quentin. He was compulsively neat, good with numbers, and his handwriting was dainty, round, and meticulous. Though he still played music on a borrowed tenor sax for dancing at Saturday night party and other entertainments, Synanon made him an accountant, and he remained in that job for the 2.5 years he spent there. My job in the school continued for a while. When the school facility was abandoned for a newly constructed set of workshops out behind the clump, I was selected to run an art workshop that included about 15 kids aged 2 through 12, some still in diapers. I was a child of hardcore Trotskyists. From the comrades, I'd learned that in the struggle, with a capital S, artists must be useful or else be seen as parasites. Propaganda was the only art the movement recognized. Muscled workers breaking their chains, that kind of thing. I already knew that Synanon's founder, Chuck Diedrich, for different reasons, similarly despised the arts and artists for contributing nothing to progress or profit. I was a pragmatist. I figured propaganda would be valued here, just as I'd seen it valued in the party. My staff of 2 and I learned silk screening from a square volunteer. I had a book of Bauhaus posters. I loved their geometric, bold simplicity. The book inspired me to do my own designs, and we ran off posters of inspiring quotations from Emerson, a Synanon favorite who became one of mine. I can still recite long passages from his essays. Our posters also advertised our parties, holidays, and special events. I loved all that. But we, quotes, workshop demonstrators had other tasks as well. All children in Synanon over 2 and under 15 lived together in dormitories like the children of Israeli kibbutzim. So, in the course of a 16-hour day, we adults had to wake the children up at 6, supervise their washing and breakfasting, and in the evening, ready them for dinner and bathe them, putting them to bed at night. While they slept, we scrubbed their dorms, the bathrooms, walls, and floors. We did that every night. It wasn't as grueling as it sounds. At that time, Synanon had a work and recreation plan known as the Cubic Day. Everybody worked long hours for 10 days straight, called motion, and then we were off work for 10, called vacuum. Schedules were staggered and the system functioned well. I'd been the parent of a toddler, so I should have had a fairly easy time with the little ones under my supervision in the art workshop. But Maggie had been a remarkably reasonable 2-year-old. These kids were harder to deal with. So I practiced viewing them as mental patients. Think about it. They're humans, but not rational. This mindset, which I kept to myself, worked out well for me, and I was seldom frustrated or angered by their tantrums and contrariness. I didn't expect them to make sense in any way that I could understand. They were puzzles I would work on. Since most of the kids in the school were the offspring of addicts, some were very troubled. I took on 2 2-year-old girls as personal projects because they touched my heart. One was a gorgeous caramel-colored charmer who was subject to sudden destructive, violent rages, which turned her into a screaming tornado, demolishing everything she hammered at and frightening everyone, herself most of all, I thought. People were afraid to touch her. She would break your glasses or your nose. And thank God corporal punishment was forbidden, though that also meant we didn't touch them much. So everybody reasoned with her. Naturally, that made her crazier. One day, in the middle of her fit, I took a chance and grabbed and hugged this dervish, capturing her arms and legs, dodging her teeth, repeating, "I won't let you hurt anyone," until she could give up the fight, calm down. Thereafter, when she flipped out, people knew to come and get me. After a few of these episodes, they became infrequent, and she turned into a puppy and followed me around. The other was a speechless little ghost, rendered really unattractive by a perpetual stream of snot, which ran down her colorless face and into her colorless hair and onto her clothes. In the silent film Broken Blossoms, Lillian Gish plays an abused, neglected girl who lives in squalor, a servant to her brutish father. There's a devastating scene during which he backs that fragile child into a closet where she flaps against the walls and flutters like a captive bird while he beats her with a belt. One day, Richard Barthelmess, he plays a Chinaman, befriends her, smiles at her. She tries to smile back, but is so unused to the experience, she has to use her fingers to lift the corners of her mouth. This gesture, to us moderns, is a little comical. Part of the joke lies in what seems to be the impossibility of the conceit. When I one day decided to smile and say hello to little Devi, the ghost, the child of hippie addicts, she didn't use her fingers, but her responding grimace, the tentative and unaccustomed baring of her teensy teeth, almost knocked me on my knees in pity and guilt. I had never greeted her, never smiled at her, never thought to wash her face and comb her hair or wipe her nose. Nobody did. I got my little workshop team to help me. We devoted real attention to these two. And by the time I left the school, about a year later, both were doing much, much better. And what about your child? My conscience prompts the reader to ask. Maggie, Part 1. During my first months in Synanon, in spite of my careful habits of mind control, I did have one breakdown. After a game during which someone insisted I talk about my daughter, I complied. And after that game, some minor incident, a little criticism from a man I ordinarily liked, made me cry. And then I couldn't stop. Literally. I was standing next to the coffee shop in the clump where we all lived and was surprised to find I'd started crying, and then discovered that I couldn't stop, but was suddenly possessed by escalating and explosive choking, gasping, streaming, floods of tears and mucus. The man was stricken. I kept trying to breathe or talk, but only managed sobs. A small crowd gathered, and people asked me what was wrong. And I remember finally managing to stammer that my problem was, I can't, choke, sob, stop, sob, shudder, crying. I was led off to the infirmary where I lay in a dim room alone, and after about 15 minutes, it was over. The following day, my tribe leader lectured me, suggesting I wasn't busy enough. And when I started arguing, she called an immediate game on me where I bitched about everything that bothered me, but never mentioned Maggie. When I entered Synanon, Maggie was in Barrett's custody. I was told by Synanon that I could have no contact with the outside world for 90 days. At the end of that time, and before I met Art, I managed to get a very brief visit with her. My mother brought her. Still just 4, she was clinging to the last stuffed animal I'd given her, a raffish critter we'd named Foxy Doggy. She clung to me, too, in my mother's car, asking me to sing her the song I'd always sung her to sleep with. In her little voice, she sang with me. If all the young men were like hares on the mountain, then all the pretty girls would take guns and go hunting. Hilly toodly toodly lily toolay, hilly toodly toodly lily toolay. But all the young men are like dew on the corn. They're with you at night, in the morning they're gone. Hilly toodly toodly lily toolay, hilly toodly toodly lily toolay. After she had gone, I finally cried like a normal human being and talked about it in a game, the whole business. And I surrendered for a while to that form of madness everyone accepts, the rapacious, protective, maternal passion. Even so, Synanon strictures protected me. I'd been taught to act as if I was rational. I'd been learning how to do that. I began rationally scheming to get regular visitation.